Welcome to Everyday Martial Artist, a weekly podcast where you'll join me, Brian Doucette, as I interview a different martial artist each episode and hear their story. Some guests you may have heard of, and some you probably haven't. Be sure to subscribe where all your favorite podcasts are available. Also visit our website at everydaymartialartist.com. If you're listening for a specific interview, I sure hope you'll stay and check out the other episodes. A very special thank you to Topher Williams for our custom theme music. And now, the newest episode of Everyday Martial Artist. Everyday Martial Artist is brought to you by KOOnline.com for all your martial arts needs. Sparring and safety gear, rank belts, uniforms, weapons, patches, and more. Wholesale supplies made by martial artists for martial artists. Visit us today at ko-online.com. Hello and welcome to Everyday Martial Artist. I'm your host, Brian Doucette, and as we do every week, we're joined by a brand new guest talking about their life and their journey throughout the world of martial arts. My guest today is a martial artist and actress. She was the first woman to hold the title of #1 Women's Black Belt Forms Champion for the Karate Illustrated rankings, a title she held 2 years in a row. She was also the first woman to be rated #1 Women's Black Belt Forms competitor in the STAR system ratings, and the first woman to win the Grand Champion at the U.S. Open. She's credited with historic contributions to the martial arts, specifically for women. Before she fought to make changes, Karate Illustrated rated men and women together. She retired from competition after winning the Diamond Nationals by defeating Cynthia Rothrock, Belinda Davis, and Lori Clapper. She then moved into Hollywood and has been seen in such movies as Shinobi Ninja, Above the Law with Cynthia Rothrock, Cyborg 2, and in TV series like Hercules, The Legend Continues, V.I.P, Criminal Minds, just to name a few. She currently holds the rank of professor and 8th degree black belt in One Hop Kuen Do under Senior Grandmaster Al DeCascos. Please welcome my guest today, Karen Sheperd. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good. I truly appreciate your time. And I know we've been talking about this for a while, so I'm glad we're finally able to work it into both of our schedules and make this happen.
Yes, well, it's an honor to be invited. Thank you so much.
Well, kind of what we do with all my guests, I want to go back to the very beginning. I want to know where that first spark came from, that first interest that kind of kicked off your martial arts journey.
The very first moment, and it's kind of an interesting story because I can look back on it now and kind of know how it happened. But back then, this was a really long time ago. I was a kid and I had to choose a credit for school. I had like a little extra time and they had a big board posted of class choices. And on that board, I saw karate. And I thought, wow, that would be really different. I was a gymnast and I thought, well, that would might sort of be easy for me because I was a gymnast, but it sounds really exotic and it's something that I don't know anybody that did. So I took the class. It was a 3-month class in Shotokan karate.
Oh, cool.
And even then, those moves just felt so natural to me. And I really loved it. And at the end of the class, the instructor said, you have an ability. You should really take formal classes. And of course, my dad said no. I was very, very, very young. And that was like, no, well, girls don't do that. And that's just a fad that you're going through because, I was a young teenager and I was young girls go through fads. They don't last long at certain things. They just move on to the next. But he thought it would be no. So we couldn't afford it. And so time went by and then I got into my first year of college and somebody said, hey, come try my Tai Chi class. And there was a gentleman, young student, Chinese student who was teaching Tai Chi on the side in a little warehouse room somewhere in Oregon, in Eugene, Oregon, off campus. And so I took the Tai Chi classes and they were really affordable because it was just extra money for him to get by on. And so I just paid for it out of my allowance and my little budget. And I loved the movements of Tai Chi. And when he would describe what they meant and where they came from, and that they were animal movements and that they were actually fighting techniques and that they could be applied and, sped up. And it was like, wow, I just love that kind of movement. And then I met a girl in one of my classes who said, hey, come and try my Kajikempo class. And again, this was being taught off campus by another student who was just making pocket money. So it was extremely affordable, and it was like a karate club. So I was able to take those classes in, but that I knew that was going to be it. There was just something about, I had a knowingness. My friend and I stayed up all night making my first gi. She was the most interesting, this friend of mine, her name was Sue, and we stayed up making my uniform. She had a pattern, and it was a Chinese black martial arts gi. Well, I think there's a different Chinese word for it, but I just knew that that was going to be my thing. I had a knowingness. I can't even explain it. And I was one of like 3 women in the class. And again, I felt like I belonged, and it just felt so natural. And I was right. That was it. Kajukenpo was the style for me, and I excelled. I very innocently went to my first tournament, not expecting a thing. I was very underestimated and overlooked because I was very shy. I had been bullied as a kid. Maybe that's one reason I chose karate. I don't know, but I was very quiet and shy, and I went to my first tournament, and I won first place in kata, and nobody watched me from the school.
Wow.
And I walked up to my instructor. Yeah, I was, by myself, and I walked up at the tournament and showed him my trophy, and he was like, "Oh, wow, well, good for you." And
Wow.
and I just kept winning. And then he went to Denver to study with Aldo Coscos. He went there to open up a Kajukenpo school and to study One-Hop Kendo with Aldo Coscos. And that's where I met Aldo Coscos and Malia de Coscos Bernal. And I'll backtrack just a hair. At one point before we went, of course, I followed him to Colorado. I moved, packed up, and went too. And that was a whole ordeal because I had to tell my dad I was quitting school to go study martial arts. And my dad was a professor at the university. And so education to him was like gold. And, we're sitting in the backyard, and I had to tell him, Dad, I just have this calling. I have this feeling that this is what I'm meant to do. And I know it sounds kind of ridiculous to quit school and go pursue martial arts, and which is something that was totally foreign to him and to most people, especially women. And, he was the most wonderful man. He gave me his blessing. He said, I don't ever want you to say what if. I don't want you to ever later in your life look back and go, what if I had tried? He said, but you have to promise me that you will try. And if it doesn't work out, admit that you tried your best and then move on and go back to school. He said, but realize your chances, the statistics are against you. Once you quit college and you leave school, the chances of you ever going back are like less than 10%. And he was right. I tried to go back a couple of times, but did not finish. But he gave me his blessing. I agreed to his terms. And I packed all my things up and went to Colorado and eventually transitioned to One-Hop Kendo, to Grandmaster. At the time, he was Sifu Aldo Coscos. And studied One-Hop Kendo. Wow. And I had gone to, prior to that, I had gone to San Francisco with my school. This was before I went to Colorado. Our school went down to San Francisco in 1976 to watch big national tournament. It was the first national tournament I had ever seen. I didn't go down to compete. I just went down for the experience. I was still a white belt, and I didn't know about competing. I wasn't ready. I just wanted to cheer everybody else on and just soak in the whole vibe and experience and see what it was all about. And at that tournament was Eric Lee and Malia de Coscos Bernal competing on stage, performing in kata. And he was at that time the king of kata. And they blew me away. It was just incredible. I had never seen anything like it. The power, the grace, the beauty, the intention, the fierceness that both of them had. That's what made me want to be a kata champion. Kata forms, whichever term you wish to use. So that was my goal in going to Denver. It was like, I need to study with Malia. And it was a few years before she would accept me as a student. She kind of always gave me this eye, like, we'll see. We'll see if I'll teach you. I had to prove myself. And I trained with Sifual in classes, and I traded. I couldn't really afford the classes. I had to work, and I had to do chores around the school to help pay for my classes and whatever I could, because I really couldn't afford it. But they saw something in me, so they were generous and allowed me to train and help out in the office and, clean the school or do whatever I could to help pay.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one day Sifual would break out. Every once in a while, he would break out the dragon, the Chinese dragon, lion dance. Sorry, the lion and the drums, and he would pound on the drums, and people would get inside. We'd do a lion dance, and then he'd have people do their forms to the drums, and that stirs up a lot of. I don't know if you've ever been present during a lion dance.
No, I
but
haven't.
it's the most phenomenal experience. The lion dance represents different things, but the concept is to bring good luck, goodwill, good emotion, good, love, vibes. It's an uplifting, very symbolic dance and experience. And the drums, the big giant drum they use for that it sounds amazing. And it just really gets you going, and you just feel so good and energized. And he had all the students perform their katas to the drums one at a time. We'd sit against the wall and line up. He'd call somebody up, and up you go and do your form. And it was my turn, and I got up, did my form. I was like out of my body. It was it was the best form I'd ever done. I could just tell that there was something different. It was because of those drums, the energy, and the class erupted in applause. And you just don't do that in a martial arts class.
Yep.
That never happens. I was so embarrassed. I looked at Sifual and I went, oh no, I'm in trouble. He had this look on his face, just like glaring at me, like, oh, he didn't say a word. And I sat back down on the floor. He just kind of nodded at me, and we finished the class. And then after the class, he sat me down against the wall after most people left. And he said, Karen, it's really too bad that you don't have money. It's really too bad that you can't afford to travel the national circuit, because I think you could be a champion. And that just, at my age, it just broke my heart. And I went home crying, and it upset me for about a week. I thought, well, I want to be a forms champion in this. I know I can't afford it. And there was someone in my class who was very wealthy, who could afford it, was not as good as I was, but it just really bothered me. But then something happened, and I flipped my thinking. And I just said, you know what? Where there's a will, there's a way. I'm going to prove him wrong. And it's just going to happen. I don't know how. So that was kind of a really monumental moment in my training and my thinking. And I just started training harder. And one day Malia came to me and said, okay, I think you're ready. Do you want to train? Oh, I said, well, of course. That's why I'm here. And I've been waiting for you to accept me. And she said, well, I think you're ready. So be prepared, because this is not going to be easy. And I don't know if you've ever met her.
No.
Oh, I think she would be a fantastic interview. Malia was the first. She was actually rated in 1976. There was the only ratings ever before that was, I think it was called Official Karate Magazine by someone named Mike Anderson. Mm-hmm. And he had kind of a haphazard ratings thing that was not based on any kind of consistency. It was kind of like, well, who traveled the furthest from home? How many trophies did they get based on national and regional? And who did we see more often? And there was no point system or real regulation, but she was clearly far and away number one, and he put her as number one because she did have the most trophies. She traversed the nation competing with men, often the only woman. So he gave her the number one position, and that he folded. The magazine only lasted for a couple of years, maybe like 2 or 3 years, and it folded. So from 1970, and then she retired. In fact, I think Eric Lee and Malia DeCoscos Burnell retired that year after 76, because I started training with her in 77, the end of 77, and there were no ratings. None for women in forums. Karate Illustrated had ratings for men, and, they threw women in with men.
Mm-hmm.
So at any rate, Malia was clearly the best, and I had achieved my goal of wanting to train with her. So that's what really sent me on my journey. I could ramble, so you stop me anytime if you have any questions.
I'm loving this. This is great.
Good. Okay. So I committed, and we trained hard. I mean, old school hard, walking out, dripping sweat, pain, blood. I mean, it was different from how people train now.
Yeah.
And then they went to Germany. They left and opened a school in Hamburg. And I was left high and dry and with no teacher. And here I was wanting to compete and getting ready to thinking about hitting the national circuit. So somehow, I don't know how I did it, but I got myself to Germany because I needed to train. I needed to complete my training and prepare for the national circuit. And so I trained with Malia in Germany. I stayed there for a couple of months, and we trained hard. She trained myself and another student by the name of Christian Wolf, who was also champion. He was a European, German champion. I mean, he ended up being the top forms competitor in Germany and Europe, and I'm not even sure he might have been rated here. I don't know, but he still is really good. He still is an amazing martial artist. But she would pit him and I together in our training sessions, and we would have to do our form like 10 times full out as if we were competing. And if we even stumbled a hair, we have to start all over again. And we did that every day for months, walking out of there just limping and dripping with sweat and in pain and just drilling the things that we didn't have perfect over and over and over. It was intense, incredibly memorable. My time in Germany with her at the school was really super special, but it made me a champion. And I came back. Oh, I have to say, before they went to Colorado, we went to the Long Beach International Karate Championships in 1977.
Okay, cool.
Yes, 1977. I was a brown belt, and we drove from Colorado to Long Beach, actually Hollywood, because we stayed at Eric Lee's house. Eric Lee lived in Hollywood, and he was famous for putting up students at his house. So he always had people staying there. He's such a generous person to begin with. And so we and about 10 other students crashed on his floor and drove down to Long Beach every day for the internationals. And I won it as a brown belt in 77. And then she had gone to Germany, and that whole story unfolded. And then I trained in Germany. Then I came back and won all alone. She had stayed in Germany, and I came back alone to no school, no fellow students, and hit the national circuit on my own. And I traveled alone. I had no family, no fellow students. Well, for me, I didn't mean it that way, but it was kind of lonely.
Yeah.
And, you don't have anybody cheering you on. You have to just buck up and do it and boost yourself up and have the mindset of a winner. You have to learn how to do that. And so I won the Long Beach Internationals in 79 as a black belt and competed. I realized in 78, I'm traveling around the country competing, and there's not that many women. And women would come up to me, like at the Battle of Atlanta. Joe Corley, I hit that tournament like 3 times in a row.
Mm-hmm.
And the last time I showed up, he said, I walked into the gym and he said, "Oh, Karen, you're here. I may as well hand you your trophy now." I love him. He's just the best.
Joel's been on the show. He's a great guy.
He has. Wonderful.
Yeah.
I love him so much. He's just such a kind man. So women would come up to me and say, we really like what you do and want to do it too, but we just are intimidated. We don't want to compete with men. What's the point? Why do you travel the tournament and the circuit and pay all this money? Well, by that time, promoters were seating me and they were paying my expenses because I was the one to beat.
Nice.
So the top competitors, they would fly in and pay the expenses, because then you were billed as come beat Karen Sheperd or, Keith Vitale or whoever. So women would come up and say, well, we want to do this too, but you're the only woman out there. So how are we going to, what's the point? And that really bothered me. It really bothered me because I knew that the women were out there. I knew they wanted to compete. And there were a few top competitors like Lori Clapper and Belinda Davis and Arlene Lemus, and I would see them on the road at the various tournaments. And I was so young and bold, and I felt like, what have I got to lose? So I called the Black Belt magazine and asked to speak with Renardo Barden, the editor of Karate Illustrated. And he so kindly agreed to have a meeting. So I drove up there and we talked about it. And I said, well, why don't you rate women separately in forms? Because I really think more women would come out and compete if they had a title to work for. And he said, well, maybe, but let's see. He said, I need you to help me. We have to see what tournament promoters think about it and the other women. And well, I knew other women, of course, would want it. But he said, if you get a petition going and you convince these promoters to have divisions for women, which in itself that was the harder challenge, because these promoters didn't want to pay for the trophies. It was like there's not enough women. I know, right? There weren't enough women to warrant the expense of the trophies, which was really silly to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of, there's a saying I heard: pioneers are never popular because they have to face these challenges that make them unpopular. People don't want confrontation or to change. And especially when you're a young woman, you have there was this double wall to contend with. So I just smiled and did my very best to speak to promoters and explain, hey, you can help out and help make history here and help women's sport karate grow by having divisions for women. It would bring them out of the woodwork. I just know it. Well, long story short, finally got it done, and it happened.
Do you remember who was the first promoter to say yes? Do you remember?
It might have been Joe Corley, because he did not. Yeah, he did not have divisions for women. And I remember speaking to Larry Carnahan and to there was some other people who were beginning to have divisions for women. Ted Kresge at the U.S. Open. And some of them were like, well, no. And some of them were really open-minded. But then once they saw that, yes, women were coming out of the woodwork, they went with it. But some of them were not open-minded. Some were very open-minded. That was the hardest part. And in 1979, the ratings were established. I got the petition in. We had enough promoters having divisions for women. More women started to compete. And I knew that I would be rated number one because I was going to the most tournaments and winning. And Karate Illustrated told me I had the most points for the year and that I would likely be number one. And that was wonderful, but that wasn't my full intention. It was to grow the sport and have these women get off the benches from watching me and being inspired to competing. And I was right. It happened. And so in 1980, they came out of the woodwork, and then you had a whole nother generation come in, like Cynthia and a lot of other women. And it went from literally less than 10% to almost 50%.
Wow.
And those figures I got from Black Belt Magazine, because in this process, I needed to know what I was dealing with statistic-wise. And I wanted to know how many women martial artists there were in the country. And at that time, based upon their readership and their numbers in their research, it was only 10% women were martial artists. And it jumped to almost 50% when the ratings were established. They did come out of the woodwork, and I was happy about that. And so, it was my goal was accomplished, and I was happy to hand off the baton and retired from competition in halfway through 81. So, I don't believe in coincidences. Mm-hmm. Even since then, so many amazing things have happened on my journey. But when I look back, thinking about looking up at that board as a kid, choosing karate and the journey that I've been on, I just don't believe in coincidence. I just believe it's been God-given and God-guided, and I'm thankful and blessed. And it's still a journey I'm on. I don't know where he's taking me, but I'm just thankful and blessed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so cool. And thank you for doing that, because I never got into the competition side of things myself. I've been in one tournament in my life. I never did it but I loved going and watching competition. And my first time at a big NASCA tournament was in 1990. My friend was competing, so we went down to support him. And that was my first time going to the Diamond Nationals in 1990. And and I went for 7-8 years in a row just to watch and cheer people on and stuff. But I remember seeing people like Casey Marks Nash and Ashley Lane and some of those people who wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for you. So, and actually Casey Marks has actually been on my show.
Oh, wow. That's very cool. Yeah. NASCA came after me, after I retired. There were a number of rating systems that popped up after that. In 1979, Karate Illustrated was the only system. And then the Star system out of Inside Kung Fu, which was Star Magazine, established ratings. And then after that, NASCA started, and then some other systems. So rating, there became a numerous different rating systems. So a martial artist had to choose which one they wanted to go after, because each one had their own point system and rules and all that. So there could be many people holding the number one titles.
Yeah. That's been discussed a few times on the show. Some people think there's sometimes too many, and they need to maybe try to find a way to get it more focused again. And it's an opinion thing, so it kind of depends.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
To me, it's more options, more opportunities for guests for me. So I've had a handful of the sport people on there. I've had people like, Carmichael Simon's have been on my show, and people like that. And awesome. A lot of the former competitors from back in the 80s, 90s have been on my show. I've been lucky with that. And even some of the current ones that, if you know the name Samantha Mittling, I had her on when she was 16, but she's a NASCA champion, and it was done this TV show and stuff, just amazing with the bow staff. And so, I've been, it's funny. I don't watch the tournaments like I used to, with the show, I don't have the time, but I definitely want to I haven't been to the Diamond Nationals in almost 20 years. I'd like to go back down just to watch one of these years. It would be fun to see what it's become.
Yeah, me either. I have no idea. I haven't followed it. So
talk a little bit about your journey through Hollywood. Kind of how did that come about?
Yeah. So, I was competing. I started the 1981 season, and it was at the Diamond Nationals. And in May, I had gotten a call from Tadashi Yamashita a couple of weeks prior, and I did not know him. I knew of him. And do you know who he is?
Oh yeah. I've never had the chance to meet him, never talked to him, but a lot of my guests have talked about him.
Oh yeah. He's a legend.
Yeah.
He called me, and I don't know how he found me. I got a message with his phone number that he wanted to speak to me about a movie. And so I called him, and he's a very heavy Japanese voice, which I won't even try to imitate right now. Oh, Karen, I am doing movie in Japan. You come, Eric Lee, you come. That was basically okay.
Yes, sir.
I would love to. Very rough script outline, and I knew Eric was. Of course, I knew Eric. He was my idol, and so we were on a plane together to Japan. And that was the most amazing experience. I had an open mind. I knew nothing about showbiz. I knew nothing about filmmaking, nothing about film fighting. Just spent the most beautiful time in the mountains of Japan in a place called Tekaragawa, which is way up in the mountains. And it's very famous for their hot springs and black bear in the woods. And the hotel is this very traditional Japanese hotel where you sleep on the floor. They come and roll out this really comfy roll-out blankets on the floor for you every night. There's the hot springs runs through the hotel. So every room had its own natural hot tub. There were little hot tubs in the hallways. You could go outside and sit in the snow, in the hot springs with the snow around you. You could go. It was just so beautiful. And we had to take our meals all together. All the hotel guests had to sit in one room, cross-legged on the floor, traditional Japanese style. And that was not just a movie experience. It was a culture experience. Again, I was the only woman and one of the few only women in this hotel. And the eldest Japanese man sat at the head of the room. It was arranged by age and status. And so I'm sitting cross-legged on, waiting for my food to be served in a meal and not knowing what to expect on my first dinner there. And this old man raises his hands and points right at me, and he yells at me in Japanese. I'm like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? Tadashi leaned over to me and he said, "Oh, women don't sit like that. So women aren't allowed to sit cross-legged. You have to sit on your knees." Yes. So I had to sit on my knees to eat my dinner. And it was really surprising. Anyway, the food was all traditional Japanese, which my stomach completely flipped out at. And there was this sweet little old lady who would walk in the snow every morning to go get a piece of bread at her house so I could make a little piece of toast, because they don't have bread in these traditional Japanese. I just, after eating rice every single day and the traditional Japanese food, my stomach, I picked up a parasite or something.
Dang.
And I was really sick, and I had to do these fight scenes and begin this movie. So it was an amazing experience going to Tokyo and going to the mountains of Japan. But I'm laying there during the light changing setup in 6 feet of snow. And of course, there was no stand-in, so I had to do my own stand-in and lay there while they changed the lights in 6 feet of snow with this fake arrow stuck in my arm. And I had to lay there for like a half an hour. And I was in heaven. I was bit by the bug. That was it. I said, this is what I have to do. I absolutely love this. And it was challenging. It wasn't easy because the male Japanese stuntmen would not fight me. They didn't want to fight a woman. Here I am all over again, back with competition and, promoters not wanting to have divisions for women. And even the way I was treated often by other male competitors. Here I am again in kind of the same situation in Japan with these Japanese martial artists and stuntmen not wanting to fight a woman. And I mean, not because they respected me, because they didn't want me there. And that was the same experience that I experienced in the martial arts competition at the time I competed. Because, like, for instance, I'll give you a story. One time I was at the Battle of Atlanta. I think it was probably my third trip to it. And Joe Corley handed me the flag and said, "Hey, would you go judge men's black belt fighting, be head judge?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I grabbed the flags and headed on over there and started the match. And one guy came up to me and grabbed the flags out of my hand and said, "What do you think you're doing?" And I said, "Joe Corley's asked me to be head judge here." And he said, no way. Because I was a little petite woman, and who did I think I was?
Wow.
So, oh yeah, no, like I'm full of stories like this, but I'm not bitter. I'm not saying this to be bitter or angry. It's part of it's just part of, it shaped who I am. It's part of who, what made me who I am today. So I had to face that same thing in Japan. And also in Lebanon, I did a movie in Lebanon. So imagine Muslims wanting to fight a woman. No way, not going to happen.
Wow.
Oh yeah, that was a whole different whole thing. But anyway, that's where I got bit by the bug, and I just absolutely had a ball. And Japan was amazing, and the people were amazing and so friendly, and that was it. So I came home, I packed up, I moved to LA and said, that's what I'm going to do. I quit competition. So I stopped halfway through the 81 season and dropped out of competition and went to, Los Angeles. And this is what I'm going to do. So I started jumping into acting classes and found an agent, and that was my new path.
Such a cool story. I know, I'm just looking through some of the stuff. So I didn't realize you were on an episode of Diagnosis Murder. Did you get to work with Dick Van Dyke quite a bit during that?
No, actually, I didn't. I saw him on set, but I didn't get to work with him. He's a really nice man. Yeah. I worked with his son. His son was in my scene. Okay. His son Jerry, I think. No, that was his brother. Barry. His son Barry was in my scene, and Joe Penny, another actor. Mm-hmm. And I played an undercover policewoman. Okay. And that was a blast. That was really nice. It was fun. They were all really good to me.
I met Dick Van Dyke when I lived in California. I actually sold him a computer, and I've told the story for almost 30 years. Hands down, the nicest person I've ever met in my life. Just without doubt.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, just such a nice human.
It's so wonderful when you meet people like that. That was like when I met Walter Matthau.
Oh, wow.
But when you meet people like that, it's just it's so refreshing.
It's nice when they actually live up to the hype, because I know there's other celebrities I've met that are jerks.
Yeah, I have to say most are. Yeah. I mean, it's sad, but there's the egos are just really out of control. But when you meet someone that's truly genuine and cares about other people, and you're only as good as your top dog on the set. So if you're working for someone that has that ego, then it's just not that much fun. Yeah. But when your top people are like that, it's a blessing. It's so much fun.
How was Hercules? I know that you had a couple episodes on, and one of yours was one of the highest rated episoades of the series. I remember reading that, but how was that?
Yes, that was so cool.
That was a fun series.
It was so much fun. That was, and that's another situation where, I said you're only as good as your top dog. Well, the top dog there was like that. Mm-hmm. A really nice man, the producer, Rob Tappert, and of course the star, Kevin Sorbo. Open-minded, the most open-minded crew that I've ever worked with. And it was probably one of my favorite jobs because of that. Again, that just came to me. Rob Tappert was a martial arts fan. Oh. And he had seen a film that I did in Hong Kong called Righting Wrongs, and he was a real fan of it. So I didn't know that. I thought I was going to an audition. My manager called me. She said, "Oh, you've got this audition at Universal Studios, and they've sent over the script for Hercules." So I was able to read the script, and I figured, well, once I get to the audition, they'll tell me which scene they want me to read, give me the sides, and So I just went in prepared, knowing the script, expecting to audition. I'm waiting outside. I'm just gelling with my character. I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about the story. I'm trying not to get nervous, which is impossible at an audition. I don't know a person who isn't. If they say they're not, they're lying. But there are exercises to control that. So I'm standing out there in front of the bungalow, the Renaissance Films bungalow, Universal Studios, waiting to be called in for my audition. And instead, someone comes out and says, "Okay, they're ready for you." So in I go, expecting to go in to see the casting director. And I walk into this room, and in the room, sitting in a circle, is the entire crew, including everybody, all producers, the director, the writers, the head of the department, all the head of the other departments in a circle. And I'm like, I'm speechless. And Rob Tapert, the producer, stood up and welcomed me and introduced me to everybody, and asked me to have a seat, and just right off the bat started conversing with me. Like, Karen, it's so great to have you here. Thank you for coming. And thank you. What do you think of the script? And I told him I thought it was a really good script, and we're talking about it. And then he says, in front of everybody, he says, so tell me, what do you think about that scene when you come up out of the water nude? And I go, wait a minute. He just said me. He didn't say the character. And he wants my opinion about, and I'm starting to get this clue that I already have the part. And so I just kept on conversing and telling him, well, I said, I've never done that kind of thing before. I said, I've prided myself on staying away from anything that my father would be embarrassed of in showbiz. He said, oh, no, but don't worry. It'll be a closed set, and we'll have ways of, making you not be so vulnerable, and don't worry about that and all that. I said, okay. And so anyway, we kept going on, and I find out that the role was basically written for me.
That's awesome.
It was a dream. It was an actor's dream. It was just, from the beginning, I was just treated like just one of the gang, and so special. And I was on cloud nine. And the costumer called me about a week later, Nyla Dixon, who ended up winning Academy Awards for her work in Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
She called me up and wanted my design for the costume. And so we went over it on the phone, and I told her, I need to have my elbows and knees covered and whatever she could work into padding. But I wanted my abs to show, because I had really good abs at the time. I was like, I worked out a lot, and I trained really hard for this role, and I wanted to be cut and ripped, and I wanted to look the part of this creature that was superhuman. So we talked about the different ways to, the different look that I wanted, and what she could come up with, and her ideas. And she sent me sketches, and we went over them, and together we came up with the costume. And so I just really studied the character and got to New Zealand. And before I even went to the hotel, they took me straight to the production offices and introduced me to the head of all the departments. And again, everybody was so nice, and met the director right away. And he said, come on, let's go put your costume on. Let's see how it looks. And so I put it on, and then he took me straight to the hairdresser, and they threw this black wig on me, and we stood back, and we looked at me in the mirror, and I just started transforming. And he said, you need black contact lenses. What do you think about that? And I said, I'm willing to give it a try. And this was before they had perfected the colored contacts.
Okay.
The black contacts used to be solid black with no hole in the middle for your retina, so you could see light. And so it was like wearing super dark sunglasses. So I couldn't see a thing. If I wasn't under the filming lights, they had to tell me where I was. And it was a real challenge, because now the black contacts have a little hole in the middle, so that you're not looking like you're looking through dark lenses. Anyway, I put those lenses on, I look at costume, and this character just came to life. And I started making these physical movements and feeling this character. And the director just went with it. And by the time we got on set, and as we were filming, it was like there was this synergy happening that I had never experienced before in any other acting job. That was like meant to be. It was, I had these bodily movements, these twitches. There's like a bird, kind of like a if you haven't seen the episode, you won't know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But I came up with these bodily movements and this voice and this whole, it just felt natural. And the way it came about that was the process. And it was really wonderful. And then my manager had sent out notices to all the martial arts schools in the country that I would be appearing on Hercules.
Yep.
And back then is when they had the Nielsen ratings, these little box tops that sat on people's television sets that certain people got to track what people watched. And that's how they got the television ratings before all of the technology changed. So they got all these martial arts students across the country watching the show, and that's why the show got the highest ratings for the series. And then, of course, he invited me back for the second episode, and it was just, it was amazing. And Kevin Sorbo was so wonderful to work with. And Michael Hurst, the co-star, and the whole cast, everybody had an open mind. Whoever had a good idea could bring it to the table, they went with. There were no egos. As a matter of fact, the second script I didn't think really did justice to my character, nor did it do justice to Kevin for Hercules' character. I didn't think that it was wrapped up well. I didn't think the writers, I think they could have done better. So my husband and I sat down and we just came up with this final scene that tied the whole storyline in and really helped Kevin's character and my character. And at the script reading in New Zealand, we all sat around the table the week before we started shooting and did a cold reading of the script. At the end of the reading, I raised my hand and I said, can I propose an idea about adding a scene to this final scene? I came up with an idea that I think you might like. And they looked at each other, Kevin and the producer and the writer. And the writers were like, okay, even though I was stepping on their toes. But again, open-minded people make a big difference. And they said, sure, go ahead, read it. So I read the scene. There was silence again. Kevin looks at the director looks at the producer looks at the writers. And then Rob Tapper, the producer, said, let's do it. It's great. And Kevin said, it's awesome. So cool. I'm really proud of the fact that my husband helped contribute to the final scene in that second episode, which gave a lot of meaning to my relationship with Hercules and the storyline. So that was very cool. But that's just an example of working with people who have open minds, people who bring something. And this is a lesson for everybody in every situation. If you have an open mind and no ego, you might have a really fantastic idea that comes from a person that sweeps your floor or, brings your coffee, or you just never know where if you have an open mind, better things can happen for you. So I so much appreciate that experience, and having had worked with people with those kinds of open minds, and that's intelligence, and that is having courage and not fearing and not having ego. It can do a lot. It can go a long way.
That's awesome. So looking through your IMDb, I don't think so, but did you ever get to work with Mark Dacascos at all?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I co-starred in a film called Boogie Boy.
Oh, right there. Okay. I missed that one. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that was a film with Joan Jett.
Oh, wow.
Oh, she was awesome. In fact, I had worked with her in Walker, Texas Ranger.
Okay.
But I established a friendship with her in Boogie Boy with Mark Dacascos, and got to work with her and Emily Lloyd, who was a really great English actress.
Yep. Oh, Michael Pena was in that. Wow.
Yeah, there was some really good people in that movie.
Tracy Lords. Wow, there's a lot of big names there. That's cool.
Yeah, Tracy Lords. She was real interesting.
Okay.
And I don't know who else was in that movie. But that was shot here in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And it was fun to be able to work with Mark, who I used to babysit.
Oh, wow, really? Okay.
I lived with, when I was in Denver.
I suppose, yeah.
And I started studying with Alan Malia, I lived with him.
Okay.
for a while. I had no place to stay, and Mark was just 9 years old or something, and I got around on a little Honda CL 175.
Oh, wow.
And I used to, take care of he and his brother and give him rides on the back of my motorcycle. So Mark and I go way back.
That is
We
cool.
have quite a history. And then I got Mark a job working at Universal Studios.
Okay.
In the Conan show,
Oh,
The Adventures of Conan, where I played Red Sonja for 6 years, and Mark played young Conan.
Okay.
And so, we kind of family.
I'm a huge Only the Strong fan. That's one of those movies that I watch at least once a year.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, big fan of that show.
Absolutely. Oh, yes, absolutely. And
cool.
he was actually working at Conan, I think, when he was starting to film Only the Strong.
Okay.
And he was writing a script, and he was really wanting to leave the Conan show and take off and do film work. But he needed to pay some bills, so he hung in there doing the stage show for as long as he could.
Okay.
But so I remember taking some capoeira classes with him.
Really?
When he was learning capoeira.
From Eamon Santo?
Yes.
I'm actually trying to get him on my show. I've sent a few requests, but haven't heard back yet. So fingers crossed. He'd be fun to talk to.
Yes, I haven't spoken with him forever, but I'll see if I can dig in and try to put in a word for you.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah, that's one art. Yes. I've never studied capoeira. I've never had a local school, but the art, it's just a beautiful art, and I always just loved learning about it.
It is. It's very exotic.
So in all your years of martial arts throughout your life, is there one philosophy you've learned that just rises to the top of your list? It's super important. You keep coming back to it?
I would have to say that having humility and always thinking of yourself as a white belt.
Nice.
You don't stop learning. The martial arts you can take with you as long as you live on this earth. Mm-hmm. And you can, like you just said, you want to learn capoeira. How many thousands of martial arts styles are there?
Yeah.
And how many different techniques can you learn? And not only that, but lifestyles and self-defense awarenesses and just philosophies, and going back to keeping an open mind to anything. So if you think of yourself as, I'm not a 10th degree, 8th degree, 9th degree, whatever, professor, grandmaster, at what? It means nothing, really. You've accomplished a certain level in your style, but as far as all of the knowledge out there, you're still and always will be a white belt. And if you think of yourself that way, then I think you're going to always be humble and open-minded to learning new things. Nice. And I think being humble, having humility and an open mind, and that brings with it kindness and generosity and all of the good things that we strive to be.
Okay, good answer. All right, I have some fun questions to wrap it up. So who are 3, 4, 5 names that you would put on your personal Mount Rushmore of martial arts?
Personal Mount Rushmore. Well, Bruce Lee.
Nice.
This question requires a lot of thought, actually. I don't know that I can answer it quickly.
It'd be super quick, but I mean, and most people know that the answer could change day to day.
I know it can. It very much can. Yeah, no question for me, Bruce Lee. He was a major influence and inspiration to me. Read everything that I could on him, watched every movie. I used to tape record him at the drive-in movie theater.
Nice.
I mean, Bruce Lee was amazing. Bruce Lee was, out of this question, amazing. What else would I put there? There's so many people who have done so much to advance martial arts that people don't know about, but the famous people that come to mind, I think Chuck Norris probably has to go up there.
Okay.
It's hard to separate, those who've contributed versus movie stars.
Mm-hmm.
I get Jackie Chan, actually, I would put up there because he is not only an incredible martial artist, he took it beyond Bruce Lee to me.
Yeah.
He's a really nice man. As a human being, he's got great moral values, and he's just a really good man. So that's 3. I would have to say I'd like to see a woman up there. For me, Angela Mao was an inspiration. I don't think she was a great martial artist. She wasn't, technique wise. However, she was the first woman to get an above the title billing in martial arts film.
Oh, okay.
And she was used in so many action films. She got beat up so much and really took a lot of physical pounding, and she hung in there and did so many movies. I think that had she had the training, she could have been an incredible technician. But she did a lot to advance seeing more women on film. And a lot of people kind of overlook her. Gosh, personally, I mean, there's so many people who have developed martial arts in the country. I'd have to go by Joe Corley for tournaments and what he's done with PKA. But, this is a question that I think needs to be thought over, because there's so many facets, and you'd have to think about, well, what qualities would put them on a Mount Rushmore? It would have to be more than what they did in movies. It would have to be based on what they are as a person, a human being, what they did to help develop martial arts in the country. And Chuck, he brought exposure to it in America.
Yep.
And he's a good guy. I mean, I worked with a guy for 2 years, and he got to know him, and he treated me well. And he actually was a head judge at my tournaments a couple of times before, nice. As his movies were just taking off. Mm-hmm. Good Guys Wear Black. And so I got to hang out with him early in the career. And then later, he hired me on to work in Walker for 2 years. So that was pretty cool. Let's see, who else? I think Jet Li, movie-wise, I think he's one of the best. Really, I'd have to give it more thought. What did I give you, 4 or 5 names?
Oh, yeah, I think you gave 5 or 6, actually, so that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I would probably change that after I hang up this phone call.
Most people would.
Most people would.
That's okay.
I'm curious, what have some other people said?
Oh, man. Well, obviously, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris are probably 2 of the most picked. A lot of people pick their own instructors. Mm-hmm. Jet Li has been picked. Jackie Chan has been picked. People have picked Masoyama.
Yeah.
People have picked, I think one or 2 people picked Gichin Funakoshi. I mean, it's quite a wide range. I've had, a few people pick nothing but women to put up there, things like that.
Wow.
Yeah. Some people have, picked strictly UFC fighters if they were like MMA guys and stuff. So it really varies by the person, but easily Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris are the 2 most often picked. Not everyone picks them, but they probably been picked the most.
Right. Interesting.
I used to ask for just one name when I first started doing this, and no one could give just one. That's when I came up with the whole Mount Rushmore thing, and at least gave people a little more options. So
it's a really good question.
It's fun. It's fun just to hear it and get the talk going. So that's good, though.
Yeah.
How about a favorite martial arts book?
Oh.
One that, maybe it's the first one you recommend to someone's looking for a book, or one that you've read multiple times that you continue to enjoy reading, or...
the first book I ever read was Musashi, A Book of 5 Rings.
Nice.
Yeah, if you call that, and Sun Tzu's The Art of War.
Those 2 have been picked a lot, so that they count. Yeah. Those 2 and Tao of Jeet Kune Do are probably the 3 most picked books.
The Tao of Jeet Kune Do. There you go. I mean, that's basically... or do you want, you're talking to someone who prefers hard style or Chinese style. Mm-hmm. It would differ. But I think that the Tao of Jeet Kune Do probably would be, I would pick that as the first book, really.
That's my pick too. So
yeah, for someone who wants to start training.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter what style you do.
Cool.
And that's why I like Kune Do so much, because the style is that you adapt it to yourself. It's having that open mind thing. If what doesn't work for you, you find something that works for you.
That's good.
And that's the philosophy kind of basically behind Kune Do. You don't have to be, you can have a handicap. You can have, doesn't matter how old you are. I mean, if you can't kick high, if you can't stand up for too long, I mean, you can adapt the style to fit you, and you can create moves within the style to make work for you.
Nice.
Well, the Tao Jeet Kune Do you can apply to any style. You
Right.
can apply that. All that stuff in there is useful. So there you go.
Okay. Now this one you might not have an answer for. Some do, some don't. Do you have a favorite martial arts video game? Were you ever into games?
I don't.
Okay.
No, I never did get into video games.
That's okay.
Nope.
It's about 50-50, depends on the guest. So these last few questions, you can't pick one that you've been involved in. So this one, a favorite martial arts TV show.
Okay.
And it can go old school. I've had people pick Green Hornet and Kung Fu, and I've had people pick Warrior and Cobra Kai and everything in between. So,
well, Green Hornet is a good answer. It wasn't what you would call a martial arts TV show, but it
had a lot of martial arts in it. Yeah.
a lot of martial arts, and maybe subconsciously that influenced my choice to take martial arts,
Okay, cool.
That because it was so mystique. It was what year was that on?
What was that have been? 65, 66? I think.
Yeah, so maybe subconsciously that kind of influenced my decision to take martial arts, to look up at that board and go, oh, karate, because it was so exotic.
Okay.
And all I knew was, had seen in fighting was boxing.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps that influenced me. It was exotic.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
That's the word for it. And of course, the show Kung Fu,
yep,
the original,
yeah,
no question. I don't think I ever missed an episode of that.
Nice.
So I would say that Kung Fu with David Carradine.
How about a favorite martial arts movie?
Oh man, Enter the Dragon.
Nice. That's a good pick. That one's probably about 40 to 50% easily. People pick that one. So
yeah, I could watch it every year. I mean, never gets old. Oh no, Bruce Lee's charisma in that film and his technique and the philosophy, all of it. Yeah. Forget about it.
I got to see it on the big screen for the first time ever 2 months ago when they re-released it for the 50th anniversary, and that was so cool.
Yes.
I've probably seen it 100 times, but to finally see it on the big screen was pretty awesome.
Pretty good. Yeah. Cool. Really good.
All right, final question. Now, this one doesn't have to necessarily be a martial arts movie, just a favorite movie fight scene.
Hey.
I've had people pick anything from Marvel and Rocky and things like that to Bruce Lee and Jet Li and Princess Bride. Anything goes.
Yeah, I got to go with Rocky. I got to go with nice. Rocky 1, Rocky 2. Ooh.
Rocky versus Apollo. Classic.
Oh, my heart pounds every time. In fact, I just watched it not too long ago again.
Nice.
Just, if something makes my heart pound like that, that's a winner. All-time classic.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, my daughter wanted to watch the movie Creed, so I said, only if you watch all the Rockies with me first. So over 2 months, we watched all the Rockies, then all the Creed movies. So she's a fan too.
Oh, good for you. Yeah. Raising her right.
Oh, yeah, my kids watch all the 80s. My kids love 80s movies, 80s, 90s movies. We watch them all the time. My daughter's like, what 80s movie can we watch this weekend, Dad? So
yeah, I gotta say Rocky. Yeah, Rocky and Creed, that's just all time the most emotionally charged and well filmed, well choreographed. I mean, have you seen documentaries and studied like how he put that together?
Yeah.
And all the work, the homework he did in creating that scene?
Yeah, that was pretty impressive.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Very impressive. That just so much respect and admiration for all the hard work he put into that.
Agreed.
So creative. And, there were some beautiful scenes in like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that things like that you've never seen ever done before, but didn't make my heart pound like it did in Rocky. So I have to go with Rocky and Apollo.
Nice. And for me, that's usually my favorite fight scene changed. My favorite movie will never change. My favorite martial arts movie is always going to be Karate Kid, just because that's the movie that got me into martial arts. But my favorite fight scene changes. I've gone from like Born Identity. There's a couple of that apartment fight scene when the guy goes out the window. That's a great fight scene. I also love Rocky. Even that final fight in Karate Kid too. Final
fight in Karate and Raging Bull.
Yes, Raging Bull, another good one.
With Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it's my fight scene one changes a lot, but I'm a big movie buff. I'm a huge movie buff. So
yeah, I'm not a big action film buff.
yeah.
I love character driven films, but there's some really classic, fights in films that aren't necessarily martial arts films.
Oh yeah.
Like there's a really good fight scene in the movie Take It.
Oh yes.
With Liam Neeson.
Yes. Yep.
That are so realistic, just these down and dirty street survival type fights that aren't necessarily great technique martial art, that are just like heart pounding. They're so realistic, like could definitely happen to you on things like that.
That's why I love the Bourne Identity, the Matt Damon one, where when he's sleeping on the park bench and those two cops wake him up, and it's like a 30-second fight scene when he takes out both of those cops, and it's just like, that was so cool.
Oh yeah.
So things like that. I get, and even I just rewatched Best of the Best a couple weeks ago, which is another favorite.
Oh wow.
I have about 10 to 20 movies that I'll rewatch every year, just like that one, Roadhouse, Best of the Best, Bloodsport. Those classics that I'll rewatch at least once a year just because I love them so much.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's awesome.
Before I let you go, I have to say thank you. This has been such a blast. Like I said, I know we've been trying to do this for a while, and I'm so glad. You're an amazing storyteller. You truly are.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And I'm so sorry it took so long.
It's worth the wait.
You're just really so kind. And I thank you for such interesting questions, very thought-provoking.
Thank you.
And really love your format. Thank you so much for having me.
I thought of one more quick one. Have you ever thought of writing a book? Just thinking about that, you're such a great storyteller. Have you ever thought of writing your autobiography yet?
Brian, I got to tell you, yes. And I got to tell you only recently, because you have to be about the seventh person within a month's time that has said that to me. So I think I'm getting this message.
Good. I'll be waiting for it.
There's a calling. And I had a writer approach me when I went to the Long Beach Internationals last month in July to accept their Hall of Fame award and see that tournament for the first time since 1979.
Wow.
And Steve Cooper, who has taken it over and runs it, is such a nice man. And in fact, he has like an 80% chance of getting the arena back, that big venue that originally I competed in down there by the water, for next year. So he's really working really hard on that. But anyway,
that's cool.
On the Saturday daytime signing autographs, and a writer approached me and came up and asked me about that. And he said, just think about it and just start talking into a tape recorder, and a writer will take it over for you. So I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
I could keep talking. So there must be a reason for that. I don't know.
Good. Well, if you do, let me know, because like I said, I'll be one of the first ones to buy it, and I'll promote the heck out of it, because it'd be exciting to read. I love martial arts books, so I don't get to read as often. Since I started this show, I just don't read as often as I used to. But
no, me either. Reading is just I don't have the time. It's like But the good thing is about books that they can end up on audio tapes, and you could I could be you could be my voiceover guy. You could be my book narrator.
I've never done audiobook, but for you, I'd strongly consider it. I probably would. I've never had the interest in doing audiobooks. I don't like listening to them myself. Maybe it's because I'm behind a mic so much. I mean, I'll listen to a podcast, but audiobooks books, I just want to read them.
That's the only way I can get through a long drive.
Yeah. See, me, it's podcasts. I have to drive somewhere.
So. Oh, well, podcasts, podcasts and books, and books on tape, but anyway, so, well, thank you for putting
This has been such a blast.
And thank you for having me. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
I will let you know. I believe your episode will be out towards the end of November. As soon as I get the exact date, I'll let you know, but I think it's end of November. It's every Thursday they come out, so I will let you know ahead of time. But I truly appreciate your time, and it's been such a blast.
Oh, likewise. I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist. We hope you will join us every week for a brand new episode with a different martial artist telling their story. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave us a review. Also, be sure to check out our website at everydaymartialartist.com. There you can find all of our episodes and contact us to suggest guests and ask questions. Again, thanks for listening to Everyday Martial Artist, and we'll see you next week.